Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. Today I'm going to be working on my larch forest. I'm going to be doing two operations today. One is to balance the vigor of the trees. Larches are apically dominant, so the growth on the top is stronger than the lower branches, so I'm going to kind of balance that vigor. And I'm going to be pruning them back, if I can, to a tighter conical form. Here's a look at the forest. And you can see that the upper branches are growing much more strongly than the lower branches. So I'll be thinning the foliage on the upper branches, kind of pruning it back, selecting my branches to kind of reduce the vigor in the apex and maintain the vigor down below. Here's a look at the growth in the apex, and you can see how full and dense it is. And then if you go down the trees to the lower branches, you can see the needles haven't elongated as much. It's not as dense and full. So I'm trying to balance the vigor. So I'll be reducing the number of branches in the upper part of the trees, kind of bringing them back, shoot selecting. And at the same time, I should be able to improve the conical form, getting some of these branches a little tighter. And this operation I do a rough pruning in spring as the buds are starting to show green, so you know which buds are alive, and then later on when they're extended like this, you can safely prune back to the ones that have extended without a risk of killing off your branches. All the new trees have survived in the forest. I added the two trees on the end here and a couple at the back of the planting to kind of give it more depth. Yeah, and they all survived. The one at the front here, because I hard pruned it, it struggled a little bit. It's not coming out as quickly as some of the others. And you can notice that the buds are kind of a bit of a bluey color. And that generally means it's struggling a bit. But that should pick up as the summer progresses. I'll begin the pruning in the apex of the tallest tree in the forest. And what I'm going to do is reduce the number of shoots. These larch trees can ramify quite quickly, so if you just have one shoot, they generally put out 3, sometimes 4 flushes of growth per year. So this one shoot, the first time you prune it, it'll divide into 2, and then 4, and then 8. So you can go from one single bud to 8 branches in a single summer. So I'm going to select what branches I want to keep. So I'm also going to try and tighten it up and reduce the number of branches. So there's a shoot growing vertically here. I can take that off totally. Like that. And then I have a shoot fanning out here, and this one's vertical and this other one crosses into the center of the tree, so I'm going to take those off like that, keeping my shoot fanning outwards. I also have a shoot growing vertically here I can take off. And if you don't do this operation, thinning the apex of the trees, the apex will get thicker than down below. You'll get bulges up here, and you won't maintain your nice taper on your trunk. And yeah, with larches you're always fighting to reduce swelling. It's a constant problem. So I'll take an upper shoot off here. And then I've got a branch that's kind of growing straight back here. I can remove that one. Like that. So now you can see that branch is fanning out better. And I'm just looking at the structure. I've got a good shoot here, one here. I could take off this back one to there. So that's reduced the number of branches off of this main branch, thinning it out, kind of reducing the vigor in the apex. I'll do the same for this lower branch here, so I'll take off this shoot sticking straight upwards. This one's sticking straight up. Take that off. There's some branches growing back in towards the trunk, so I'll take those off. Like that, taking 3 off. So you can already see that branch is a lot lighter now. Now this part of the branch, there's buds on it, but it didn't develop. So my spring pruning wasn't successful in that area. So I can just prune that dead branch right off. Like that. So again, you can see how much I've thinned that out. I'll do the same for this branch. There's a vertical shoot I can take out. I could take this shoot off. Maybe. I think so, yeah. I can take that right out. Take that off. Keeping my branches down lower. Yeah, I don't think I can thin that too much more. There's a vertical shoot here I can remove. Like that. There's a shoot here going straight up, and I have a more horizontal branch coming off down lower. So I can take that vertical shoot out. Like that. This one I have a vertical shoot and I have a more horizontal one, so I can take that off. I've got some shoots in here that I don't need. They're just going in a bit of a strange direction. If I can get to that one. Here. Just getting rid of these needles. That's helping, that's thinning that apex out. I've got a shoot in here I could remove. Like that. I'm still a little heavy over here. There's a shoot sticking up the front I'm going to get rid of. That one. Clean that stub up there. There's one coming off here I can remove. Cleaning this apex up. There's one in here that can be removed. That. There's a stub I can prune back here. I don't think I need this branch in here. It's kind of cluttering it up. This one could come right off. Like that. And there's a vertical shoot here I can remove. Taking that back. And there's one on the inside here I can remove. There. The next step with this apex is once these shoots start to elongate, I'll be pruning them back, keeping them tight. and letting the lower branches grow more, so it kind of balances the vigor of the tree. So that's got the apex kind of cleaned up there. You can also do needle thinning, so you can remove some of the needles. You just pull off the bottom needles, and that also reduces the vigor of the shoots. So you can see how much more open that is now. It looks much, much better. On this lower branch, I have a vertical shoot I can remove here. Again, selecting my buds. I have one here I can remove. That's not too bad. You can see the branch over here is weaker, so I'll just let that grow. I will remove this top shoot eventually, but I'm just going to leave it for now. Keep the sap flowing to that branch, keep the vigor in it. Over on this branch, it's getting a little long, and I'm just looking for shoots that are further back so I can reduce the length of the branch. Just carefully looking. I could definitely take this one off. It's getting quite long. That one's coming off. That reduces the length a bit. There's a few shoots growing towards the inside here I can remove. Like that, I can reduce the length of this branch. And I may be able to reduce this branch back too. Maybe not. I don't have any back buds further back. This one I do. I have a bud on the bottom. I'm going to take this off. Like that. Maybe. I could take the tip off this one. Like that. That reduces it back. One growing on the inside here I can take out. That. Take a stub off here. Stub here. Stub here. Yeah, that's about all I can do on that branch. So I'll just carefully examine each branch and do what I can. It's also important to step back and look at the overall form of the tree. So I can see this branch here is getting too long. So I'm seeing if I can reduce the length of it. And take this end off the branch. I can take this upper branch off, like that. Yeah, let's shorten that branch a little bit. It's subtle, but you know, that's the whole thing about refining trees is the subtle things you can do to improve it. I think this branch has to come off. Like that. Once these shoots extend a bit, I can prune this upper part off. That'll be for the future. On this new tree here, I have a branch, quite a thick one, that's growing in towards the other tree that I'm going to remove. So I'll come in, rough prune it away first, like that. And then I'll come in and clean it up with the knob cutters. that's good. So that's cut nice and flush. I'll put some rubber cement on there just so it doesn't bleed sap and it'll run down the trunk and it's really hard to remove. So this will keep that sealed up like that. There's another branch here up higher, just above that, that I could also remove. It's a little close to the other tree, so I'm going to take that off also. Giving the trees a little space to grow. There's a stub I can take off here. Yeah, that's a lot better. Gives this tree a little more room. It's nice working on these larch in this morning light. It's just makes the trees look even more beautiful. This type of refinement takes a long time. You have to study each branch, make your pruning decisions, check out the silhouettes of the trees and the balance of vigor. And the time is well spent though. It takes your tree up a level of refinement that is noticeable in the end. You can really see a tree that's been worked on and refined versus one that's just been kind of let grow and roughly pruned. So yeah, the more your trees get up in level of refinement, the more time it takes with each tree to refine it further. I'll just show you a cut that I made at the back of the tree here. You can see that. So I sealed that with rubber cement, and you can see the sap didn't bleed at all on it. That it's completely sealed with the rubber cement. There's no sap running down the trunk. So that's just shows you, how effective that rubber cement is at sealing wounds. It's quite good. Another thing to keep in mind when you're pruning the trees is that each branch has to get light. So if you can direct a branch away from one below it, keeping both branches in the light, it's a good thing. You don't want them growing out across on top of another branch that'll shade it out, because branches in the shade, they just get weak and they'll die off. I had a branch back here that was getting too fluffy. I couldn't see the structure of the branch. So what I do is I just come in and I thin it. You just pull out about 50% of the needles, and that opens up the structure so you can see the branches then, and you can prune them up. And this happens, as all this foliage fills out, the branches just become so dense that you can't see the branches. And that's what you have to do. You have to thin the needles until you can see the structure of the tree. So that's what I had to do in this one, because I couldn't see any of the branch structure at all. It was just so dense. And you can thin the foliage by about 50%. Just pulling out some of the needles until you can see kind of what's going on with the branch. Then you can come in and prune it up. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing. You can't see the structure of the tree. You can't really prune it up very well. And it's always a good idea to thin the needles in your apex, taking vigor out of that part of the tree. As I said, otherwise it just will thicken up and you'll get some really thick branches like I have here, and there's nothing I can do with it. They probably won't ever back bud, so I'm just trying to maintain what I have, and that's all you can do. Ideally in the apex you want all your branches really thin, but as the trees get older and mature, they start thickening up, and if you don't have back buds, you can't prune them back and keep them compact and delicate looking. So yeah, so you kind of just have to manage your trees the best you can, thinning the vigor in the top These trees are some of my oldest trees, and when you're beginning in bonsai, you don't know all the techniques, you don't know what to do, when to do it. So you kind of learn as you're growing bonsai over the years, and I think if I were to start these trees all over again from what I had, I probably would have managed the branch structure much better, and I would have had better looking apexes on a lot of these trees. But that's what happens in bonsai. Your oldest trees maybe have some of your beginner flaws or mistakes, and as you get better and better at growing bonsai, your newest trees are probably going to be your best trees in the end, because you kind of know what you're doing and you manage the trees better and you spend more time on them. So yeah, that's the catch-22 in bonsai, is that sometimes your oldest trees aren't necessarily your best trees, because you're learning at that stage, and your later trees are probably developed better, but they're also younger trees. So yeah, that's what it is in bonsai, is that, and there's no looking back. You've always just got to work with what you have and try and improve it. So there's no point getting depressed about, oh, I should have cut this tree back 10 years ago. And yeah, you're always working with what you have, and whether it's a young seedling or an older mature tree, you just try and make the best looking tree you can with what you have. A couple of years ago, I had to prune off the top of this tree. It went from this size of trunk and it just got too thick up top due to poor management of the apex. And so I cut it off. It was a big move. I still have the branch that I cut off. I kept it. And this branch was very horizontal, and you have two options. You can wire it up. You can remove material to make it thin enough that you can wire up. But in the apex here, I found, generally on a lot of coniferous trees, that horizontal branches in the apex will slowly go vertical. And that's what I was waiting for in this branch. And it's getting better. Every year it goes a little more vertical. It still looks a little awkward from some views, but it's getting better. So that's something to keep in mind. You can, anything the apex tends to straighten up. Here is a look at my progress so far. So I can see some improvements. They're thinner at the top, they're less dense in the apex. The branches are a little more structured. I have a little more of a conical form to the trees. It's improving. I will have to do the back trees, but I think I'll have to rotate the planting around to get to them. I don't have a turntable big enough to turn this forest on, so I'll just have to, manually turn it around. But I still have a little more work to do on the trees out front, and then I can rotate it around and continue working away on the forest. There's another branch I removed here and sealed with the rubber cement, and you can see how effective that was. There's no bleeding down the trunk. It sealed the wound up. Yeah, so I'd highly recommend rubber cement. It's very good at sealing. It dries so quick. It's waterproof and flexible. I will also be weeding the forest floor. There's just a few little weeds coming up, and it's important in spring that you pull all those weeds out before the roots get established. Then they get impossible to pull out. So yeah, that's part of the maintenance of a forest, is your landscape. There may also be some moss that I need to prune up. It's getting a little long in some areas. And most of these weeds, they come from the moss. When you collect moss, they're full of weeds. So when the weeds are just starting to show, that's the time to pull them out before the roots get established. Because once the roots get established and the weeds start spreading, it gets really difficult to remove them. Yeah, you don't see a lot of forests at bonsai shows, and I think it's just because there's so much work. Maintaining the landscape, the trees. And it's difficult to keep a forest long term.
You know, the trees want to grow wider and taller, and you've got to maintain the size and shape of the trees relative to each other. You can't just keep making the trees grow wider like a tree in a single pot could. You really have to control them, and it takes a lot of technique to keep them to size and shape. And you know, I'm still learning all the techniques for larches. I'm getting better at them, but I'm still not perfect yet. I mean, there's some branches I pruned in spring that the tips have died off on them, that I probably should have waited a little longer before I pruned them. So that's something I can keep in mind for next year, is wait till they've come out into needles more before I begin the pruning. And it sure is nice working on this forest in the morning light. It just feels like you're in a forest. It's very peaceful. Yeah, I really enjoy working on this forest and other forests. It's a nice feeling.
And this type of meticulous work, it's not for everyone. There's some people that it's just not in their nature to do this kind of work, to pick out little weeds and refine trees. It all depends on your personality. Some people are very, very meticulous. Well, I guess it depends how much you know why you're growing bonsai. If you're going to try and refine your trees to the highest level, or if you're just trying to keep them alive and are happy with that. That's why when you see trees at shows that are really nicely pruned, maintained, prepared, it's quite special. I really appreciate the effort people put into presenting their trees, picking the pots, the stands, preparing their trees. That's why I just love going to bonsai shows. I'm getting really nice sunlight on the trees now. They're just glowing in the sun. It looks really nice. Eventually the sun goes behind the pine tree, so I'll lose the sun for 2 or 3 hours, and then in the late afternoon it comes back and the greenhouse gets lit up with sunshine until dusk. I've turned the forest around, so I'm beginning to work on the back of it now. My new little tree that's growing up here, there's a lot of branches that are shading it out that I'm going to have to prune back just to give it light. So I've got to see what's going on here. I could prune this one back. Tip off there. Maybe this one too. Yeah. That gets a lot more light to that tree. Until the branches start filling out on it, it'll kind of fill in this space nicely. This one has lots of room. I think that's got the back of the trees pruned up. I mainly wanted to get light to this new little tree here. I knew it was kind of crowded in. So I'll weed the back part of the planting and clean it up. Lots of weeds back here. I've got the back of the forest all cleaned up, so I'm going to turn it around once again, which is not easy. It's a heavy planting, so I just kind of rotate it, lift it up like that, spin it around. Back like that. I've completed the work on my larch forest for now, until all these shoots grow in and they need pruning once again. So let's fly in now and have a final look at the trees. So that's the work on the larch forest. It took me about 4 hours. And I still have the morning sun on the trees. Yeah, it was very nice getting them all cleaned up. They look just a little better, I hope. A little more in profile, a little thinner up top. I can definitely see that the vigor is balanced more. They don't look as heavy on the tops. And the landscape's cleaned up and looking good. I didn't prune the moss, I'll leave that for later. I'll finish off the work today by giving the trees a good watering. Make sure they're nicely hydrated for the day. I'm just taking one last look at the forest in the beautiful sunshine. Yeah, it's looking quite nice. I certainly enjoyed working on the larch forest today. You couldn't ask for a better day. The sun's shining, it's warming up outside. Yeah, I sure enjoyed working on the trees, trying to make them just a little bit better. So that is all for today. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.